from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there and good evening. What's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you this Monday night. If you want to join our late-night national town hall conversation, feel free. Give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES. And plenty of things to talk about. I'm going to throw a bunch of them at you now. We're going to work through them as we move on throughout the evening. One of the big stories that is out there was, of course, you've probably seen this. Karine Jean-Pierre had a little bit of a presser where she was discussing new vaccines, and Biden's out there saying it's a great vaccine. Everybody got to take the vaccine. It's a really good vaccine. So I think you're going to really enjoy that segment when we get to it. I want to get into that. I also want to get into the state of affairs in the American economy. We're going to talk about that. While we haven't gone under, it doesn't look like we're really moving forward, at least not fast enough. And we also have, let's see, there's a couple of things. Oh, the Trump stuff. There's plenty of Trump news out there. Former President Trump now, the judges have decided we're going to do the first trial date, not right when the prosecutors asked. They said, no, that would be crazy to do it right when you ask. We'll do it 2 months after. and they ended up doing it right before Super Tuesday anyway. So how's that for a not rigged system? And interestingly enough, the president of Mexico, he goes by AMLO. Let's see, Andrés something López Obrador. Okay, and he says that what's happening to Trump is purely political, and I think that's it. This is a fight he doesn't have to get into, right? He mentioned it. I guess he was asked in an interview, but I thought it was remarkable that he actually took an opinion on it because, one way or the other, right? It doesn't really help him. I don't see the political advantage for him. But he said it, and I think he said it sincerely, in so much as he wouldn't want that to happen to him. I don't think any president would want to see their Department of Justice, their legal system turned on its head, weaponized just to go after a political opponent. And especially when you see something like that in the United States. So obviously this is a very problematic issue, and we'll continue to follow it so that you know what's going on with it. But something I wanted to talk about, and we'll get into it a little bit more in the next segment when our guests are with us. But there's a story every week, it seems, sometimes 2 stories a week, of major businesses, mainly retailers, that are just closing up shop. And yet here's another one that's joined the ranks here, the Nordstrom in San Francisco, which is honestly one of the most expensive places to live, San Francisco. Nordstrom is closing its location there after 35 years. Why? Because of increased crime. Now, a Nordstrom employee at the San Francisco location partially attributed the closure to rampant crime in the area, according to ABC News and the Daily Caller. Property crime, which includes shoplifting, rose by, listen to this, 57% in downtown San Francisco between 2019 and 2022. And that's according to USA Today. So this is fascinating to me. We've seen all sorts of stores, right? Not just that one. You had Dick's that said that they're losing money. They had a bad earnings report because they're also suffering from what used to be shrinkage. Now it's just straight up loss. And while they may be able to write it off, it's still a big thing. The gap. We've just the decline in sales to me is just remarkable. So we're going to get into that in a little bit as well. There's also, let me see, there was another big story I wanted to talk about here. Oh, listen to this. And maybe this is one we can do a little bit later as well and get your opinions on. The National Institutes of Health did a study on masks suggesting that the N95 mask may expose wearers to a dangerous level of chemicals that are linked to cancer and seizures. And, of course, I posted that on my social media earlier today, and everybody was chiming in. Does Dr. Fauci know about that? Did somebody clue him in? Now, listen, I'm not against the science. I never have been. But here's the science telling us that the N95 is the only mask that actually works. In the beginning, it was put a bandana on your face, cover your face with anything, just make sure you're covered up. Now, and I get it, there's a little trial by error, but here we are. And now they're saying that these masks are no good. And these are the masks that are supposed to be the only ones that are good, especially if they're like double-sided tape, taped to your face, around your mouth to make it an airtight seal. It makes you think, what in the world is going on? So we're going to jump into that one as well. I also want to talk about this big shooting in Jacksonville. That was an absolute atrocity. To call it a shooting, I think, is an understatement. This was a racist going hunting. And this shouldn't happen. But the question remains with that. What law can anyone propose that would stop a lunatic from committing acts of lunacy? There isn't one. Because God himself uttered these words that thou shalt not murder. And they were etched into the 10 Commandments. And that doesn't stop people. The reality is you can't stop crazy people from doing crazy things. And the argument that you should take the gun away from the sane people so that the crazy people can't have guns, it is just an argument that just doesn't work, right? I mean, I know that I don't know every gun law in every state, but I know I'm from New York and I live in Jersey now. And I could tell you in New Jersey, good luck getting a gun if you were institutionalized and whatnot. It's just not going to happen. So I look at this and I think this is an absolute atrocity. And I hope that the media shies away from the direction they were going, because I have some audio of them saying, this happened because there's rampant hate in the area. And, the way we know there's hate, we see Trump signs and Confederate flags. Now, listen, I am not one of those guys that you'll meet that's a big fan of the Confederacy. Never have been. I've always thought it's a part of our history, but it's more of a traitorous rag than an ode to General Lee. And if you're one of my listeners that loves General Lee, good for you, not a fan. What can I tell you? That's just how the cookie crumbles with me. But to suggest that that's anything less than just an act of violence and hatred would be an understatement. And my heart goes out to everybody that was impacted by that today. Absolute craziness. And there was one more thing that I wanted to put out there for you guys, but I'll discuss it on the way back. And on the way back, we're also going to have a chat with the former president of the World Wrestling Entertainment Organization, the WWE, Linda McMahon. She was also the head of the SBA in the Trump administration, and I'm looking forward to our chat with her. So, folks, stick around, sit back, relax, kick up your legs, turn the volume up on your radio. We are just getting started. I'm here with you till 1 a.m. Eastern Time. That's the next 3 hours. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, familia, welcome back. Rich Valdes, and our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES, if you want to join us. Now, our guest is somebody you've probably heard of. You've probably seen her on television, whether it's through her business or through her role as the administrator for the U.S. Small Business Administration. Linda McMahon is with us. Linda McMahon, welcome.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I have to tell you, there's so many important things to talk about, but I want to talk about my upbringing for a second and how my dad, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, right? And my dad, first of all, it was my mom. My mom used to take me to Shell Bank Junior High School in Brooklyn, not far from our house. And we would go and watch the weeknight events that you guys used to put on when it was the World Wrestling Federation. And then as I got older, my dad would take me to the Garden, to the events that are now today, like Monday Night Raw and stuff like that. And I got to tell you, these were some of the most impressionable and memorable parts of my childhood. And it's just remarkable for so many people on so many levels, right? I think it's a real family affair. It's like going to the circus, but maybe a little bit more affordable. And here we are today, where it's an absolutely huge industry and enterprise. And I think it's fantastic. Tell us how you got from traveling like so many small wrestling promotions to becoming this massive one known as the WWE?
Well, thank you so much. The job description at WWE, and by the way, I am not at WWE anymore. It clearly is still, run by my family, but I haven't been there since about 2009-10, but was very instrumental in the growth and development and taking the company public and all of that. So I'm very proud of the company. And the job description for WWE for everyone every day is to put smiles on people's faces. And so that's the job. It's to entertain, and it is to bring fun, and it's family entertainment, and families go together just like you were describing. And so those events are held, all over the world at this point, and it's just really such a fun and vibrant business. And to go anywhere in the world and be recognized is quite a thrill. And
I could only imagine.
To see how the business grew from just being kind of as you said, kind of a traveling, just a traveling show to now having events only in big stadiums, big arenas all around the country, was just the evolution of the popularity of the product itself and how we decided to make it be different. But, at first it was in high school gyms, as you mentioned, et cetera, but now it is in the major stadiums and arenas all over the world.
Really remarkable. And I think, like many things in life, it's a testament of A, the American dream, B, it shows kind of like what you learn along the way, which I think really paves the way for someone like yourself and other entrepreneurs that have achieved success to really weigh in as the small business administrator for the United States. I think that's an important position, and one that really should always be held, I think, by somebody that was on the front line and is now in government. And I've always taken exception to people that are just kind of like bureaucrats or people that, come out of academia, because I feel like they're missing the grit. They're missing, something you said, right? Your mission statement, to put a smile on people's faces. That business is very different than my business, but ultimately same thing, right? I have to be informative and entertaining and do a heck of a good promo to make sure people come back. Otherwise, SOL. So I think that's so many people, right, in what they do in their lives, whether they have a bodega or whether they have a moving company. Small business is the backbone of our country. And I think it was just great to see you in that role. What were some of your big takeaways from being the small business trader for the United States?
Well, and I'll get to that in just one second. Just a couple of stats that you've blown me away relative to small businesses. 99% of the businesses in this country are small businesses. 99%. Wow. About 33 million of them, and they contribute about 43, almost 44% to GDP in this country. And it's an amazing statistic. And as you mentioned, it is everything from the mom and pop shops, the small bodegas, all the way up to, as defined by SBA, to a company with about 500 employees. That's kind of a general rule of thumb. And it's just amazing to see all the different businesses and what the innovation of entrepreneurs, all over the country. I had the benefit of being at SBA, of doing some amazing things. I went to every district office. There's 68 of them in all 50 states. I visited small businesses. I would do press tours while I was there to bring attention, focus to those small businesses and what SBA was trying to do. And it's just an amazing country to see what people can do with the American dream. And I'm not just throwing that out there in a trite way. This is the only country in the world where you can have that opportunity to put everything you've got into it and to succeed, and often fail, take risks and fail. I've failed. Went bankrupt one time, lost our home, or my car was repossessed in the driveway. So it's not, it's not always successful. There are some times when you may risk it all and lose it all for a bit. But I always said it's not how you fall, it's how you get back up. And so small businesses, they really, really are the backbone of the economy in this country. And it was such a wonderful thing, an opportunity for me to be able to serve at SBA. And really, I think the thing I took away the most from my tenure at SBA was piggybacking a little bit on what I was just talking about, and that is that this country has the most inventive and creative people, I think, in the world. And it's amazing to see, what they can do. Now, whether that's in the tech world, where I think we see a lot more focus and attention put on that today, startups, and you can hear about all the young technicians in the startup world who have an idea and they build all these systems in their garages or when they're in college, and then suddenly they're out and they sell them and they're billionaires. But there are so many, many more of the corner deli and the pizza shop and the hair salons and the nail salons and all of those businesses that go into making what our economy is based on, and why we are so strong here in this country.
I 100%. And again, as you say that, I resonate. My very first job was at Dunkin' Donuts as a teenager, but right after that, I'd made myself a job, and it became a business, and I opened a barbershop while I was still in high school, and I did that for years. And it was easy for me at the time because, I was an affable guy, and I was able to get clients. But I look back at that, and I think, is that same opportunity available today to a high school senior to actually, get some money, borrow some money from my brother or whatever I did, and open up a storefront and then go to school for cosmetology and whatnot? I think the opportunity's there, but it's definitely not going to be as easy as it was for me because there's a lot of obstacles in the way today, not the least of which is inflation, which hopefully is temporary, meaning it's going to go away eventually, not transitory like the Fed chairman said. But I feel like there's just a number of obstacles, including red tape. And this was something that you and President Trump were very effective at managing during your tenure with the SBA, was managing red tape so that people actually had access to whatever the SBA had to offer. Tell us about it.
Well, that's exactly right. And President Trump, when he took office, he was definitely anti-regulation. He was definitely against unnecessary regulation, and he wanted to cut taxes. He wanted the economy to flourish. And so small businesses were absolutely the beneficiary of both of those policies. And he put in place for every new regulation that was promulgated, then you had to remove two. And I think at the end, it was like up to 8 or 9 or more regulations that were actually taken away for each new one that was put in place. And the economy just thrived. We cut taxes. The middle class flourished. The economy was just strong. Businesses were able to get loans because inflation was so low. Interest rates were down. Money was much easier to access. People had more money in their pockets, so they were going to stores and they were buying more things. And that's the kind of, economy that we have. We have entrepreneurs who are willing to take risks. They put goods and services on sale. Or to provide for those who need those goods or services, and that's what you do.
Outstanding. Linda McMahon, stick with us. We're coming right back. Folks, we're on with Linda McMahon, former U.S. Small Business Administrator and former president of the WWE. We're coming right back with her, plus your calls and more. Straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdes.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, familia, welcome back. And just like anybody who's a fan of wrestling, and listen, if you're not a fan of professional wrestling, you're missing out, right? You're missing out on all of the excitement of it, the characters and how those characters develop, the storylines, the plot twists, all of the excitement, the aluminum chair that comes out of nowhere, all of that stuff. It sounds so much like American politics, right? It's just today it's this, tomorrow it's that. Now we've got trials that are set for President Trump right before the Super Tuesday primary, and just more and more and more piling on every single day. And it just it is eerily reminiscent. Years ago, I used to joke with my friends when we'd see crazy things in politics, and we would like message each other and be like, yeah, totally WWE. But now it's like, man, this is really coming to life. Like, it's absolutely out of control. Folks, our guest is Linda McMahon, former president of the WWE and former U.S. Small Business Administrator. And Linda McMahon, do you agree with me that things are just totally out of control in our government, or is that just me?
Well, certainly the policies, I think, are out of control. There's no question about that. And we were talking a little bit before the break, about small businesses and were they able really to get started today? Like maybe
Right.
Is it harder today or to stay in business? And, one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about was the impact of businesses on crime. And these are policies as a result of crime. And these are policies that are in place where criminals are not being arrested. They're not being prosecuted. The laws are just too lax. I mean, in New York City or in New York, if you don't steal something that's over $1,000, it's just treated as a misdemeanor. In
Right.
California, it's $950. Just go in and you steal, and hey, well, you know what? $950 maybe to that store owner. You've got that small retail shop on the corner. And those folks have put their life savings in it to stock those shelves, or maybe they've maxed it on their credit card or whatever it is. And it doesn't take too many of those kind of robberies to come in, and suddenly they're bankrupt and they're out of business. And it's just a shame that this is allowed to go on. You look at Nordstrom's that's just closed in San Francisco. That was 300,000 square feet, I think 5 floors of a major store.
Wow.
In San Francisco. And what you have to consider, Rich, is it's not just that store. Any big store, any Main Street store, whatever, that's large like that and attracts foot traffic and customers coming in, are all kinds of other small businesses that grow up around it. There is the little cafe on the corner. There's the coffee shop. There are all of those things that support all of those surrounding businesses. So when you have something like Nordstrom's go out of business and shut down, you impact all of the other businesses around it. It's just the domino effect. And we are seeing that all across the country in this crime wave. There are gangs. These are hoodlums that go into these stores and rob, and they do it in a very sophisticated, planned way. I was looking at a statistic in New York that said that, all of these crimes in this whole spate of crimes over the last few months were all done by this same group of thugs. There are a little over 300 of them, and they have committed over 6,000 robberies in the same areas, just this same little group. They go in, it's organized that they go in and rob these stores. And the impact of that is just really, unbelievable. People don't want to work in the stores. You have consumers who don't want to go in the stores. And they, like Nordstrom's, could go out of business. And it's just insane that the policies that we have, with mayors or, with police commissioners or whatever they are, the district attorneys that are in these areas that are not enforcing the law and allowing this lawlessness to continue, is just absurd. And it's very dangerous, for not only people who may get in the way of these thugs who are coming in, but also, just for the economy in general. This is really rampant, and it has to stop. Different policies have to be put in place to stop this.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with this, Linda McMahon. The 82-year-old worker at a Home Depot a couple of months back who got in the way of a shoplifter, he was knocked down, he died. And that's horrific, right? And then we look at how something you mentioned, and as you were saying it, the word that popped to my mind was organized crime, right? These are organized crime rings that are going out there with hammers. They're masked up. They have book bags on. They're ready to go. They do the smash and grab, whether it's the Yves Saint Laurent store or Nordstrom or anywhere else. And this is big business for people in the streets, and some suggest that this is the result of deregulation, and not the type of deregulation that you talked about with Small Business Administration, but this is really decriminalizing crime. And you have these pro-crime progressive prosecutors that choose not to prosecute, and it kind of adds fuel to the fire. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, do you see this coming to an end? How so?
Well, it just has to come to an end. I'm not a lawyer, but honestly, I think that there's some of these small businesses in these cities that, are at some point going to say, you know what, we're going to sue we're going to sue the city, or we're going to sue whoever it is we need to sue. But we have to put a stop to this. We have to, organize ourselves and to get some muscle behind us. And not muscle, I don't mean that in terms of streets and rioting and all of that. I just meant that figuratively.
Effective policy.
But legal muscle, good policy. And elections do have consequences. So you have to look at who you voted for to put into office. Who are the district attorneys? Who are those representatives that may be more in line with making sure these policies go forward, or don't change them. And let's make some changes, with elections to put the people in office that we think are going to change these policies and arrest this crime and get our economy back on track, and look at what a deregulatory environment looks like, and keeping taxes low so that our economy can flourish. And all of those things combine for the success of our country and the success of families and the success of companies large and small. And it's just necessary that we make these changes.
Earlier you mentioned 99% of all businesses in the United States are small businesses. And I'm looking at this stat here in this Fox News piece. It says that retail theft has increased by 26.5% just in 2021 alone. So that means more than 25% increase in people going in and stealing things from businesses that 99% of them are mom and pop shops. And I just can't help but think this type of policy isn't really like some people say that they're doing this because they didn't get to reparations and they felt like this was a backdoor deal with some activists. But however you want to frame it, you're actually hurting people in these neighborhoods. And it doesn't mean that these people are big corporations. These are regular people that are trying to run a business like I once ran. And I can't help but think that these policies are just so destructive to the American people. And I can't imagine the American people are going to sit there and just take it laying down.
No, and what you find is that you think about just a lot of high school students or young college students who would work in retail stores and get summer jobs and just make some money during the summer. Maybe they're helping to pay off a college loan or to get back into school. And now their parents are saying, we don't want you to work in any of these stores. It's too dangerous. And so where are they going to go? What kind of jobs are they going to get if they don't have vocational or different kind of training, in their jobs? And so it really is a real plight of our country that we've got to put people in to change these policies who understand business. That's one thing that President-elect Trump said to me when he asked me about serving as administrator of SBA. He said, I want somebody in there who's actually built and run a business. Right. And can understand when they are visiting with businesses and talking to them and what they need and how can the government be helpful and not be in the way of entrepreneurs and not overregulate them and not overtax them. And I think those were the policies that were put into place under the prior administration, and we saw what the result of it was. We had, inflation was very low. Wages were going up. The economy was thriving. And we can do it again with new and different policies.
President Reagan said it best, get off my back and out of my pocket. Linda McMahon, stick with me. We're going to come right back and wrap it up. I want to hear one of your favorite stories, either from your time as SBA administrator or your time as president of the WWE. And we're going to do that straight ahead, folks. We're on with Linda McMahon, and we're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. And our guest, former president of the WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment, and the former administrator of the United States Small Business Administration, Linda McMahon, is our guest. And we're going to get to your calls as well shortly. Linda McMahon, in your travels, both as past president and past administrator, what's the most memorable story that comes to mind?
Well, if I may, just for 1 second, we've talked a little bit about what I did in my past, and I'll be happy to talk to you about that story. But just telling you a little bit about what I'm doing now. I am the chair of the America First Policy Institute. That's AFPI, and our website is americafirstpolicy.com. And what we are doing is helping to develop the kinds of policies that I've been talking about that are necessary to make the changes that we need to make. I mean, we have 22 centers at the Institute that deal with everything from American prosperity and economics to voter integrity to our foreign relations, our defense, our healthcare systems, our educational system, all of that. And I also have the opportunity within the America First Policy Institute to chair the Center for the American Worker, which ties right back into my background at SBA and that knowledge of being at SBA and seeing what small businesses did and what is the impact on regulation and taxes for the American worker in our country. So please feel free, to check us out at americafirstpolicy.com and see the things that we are doing, working with not only our federal legislation, but also on the state level. We're a 501c3. So just wanted to let you know that that not only do I have a rich background in business development, but I'm very pleased to be doing this work now to help structure and create the policies that can go forward, on day one, hopefully for a new administration, and we'll be able to turn some things around. So
excellent
now,
work. And that was my follow-up question, by the way, so you beat me to it. Go right ahead.
It's a cheap plug. I had to be sure to get in.
Absolutely. No, you're a pro.
Exactly, what we're doing now, which is, and I have often said with as many, and I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I've had in my career, and it's been a very successful career, but I do believe this is some of the most meaningful work that I've ever done because I do think that our country is on the wrong track, and I really want to work very hard to make sure we right that ship. So when I was at SBA, I had some incredible opportunities touring all around the country. I think I might have mentioned that I visited all 68 district offices in all 50 states. And while I was there, I did fun things like I went gold mining, at a strip mine in Montana. I got to drive some of the heavy equipment. I actually went to and another time a small business was where the law enforcement agency trained its new recruits. So I was in there doing a lot of the mock shooting on videos and how to train and being thrown into, a mock environment of that you're being attacked. And I have to tell you, you really for a couple of minutes do believe that you are in a real life or death situation. You can hear people screaming and they're running up to you saying you have to come now and you have to make determinations on whether you open fire, whether you hold your fire, or all those things. You come out, your heart's really beating and you've broken a sweat. So it was really, really incredibly fun and educational, but to look at all the different businesses all across, our country and to get to participate, One time I was in a candy company and actually standing on the line. You've seen, I'm sure, many times the I Love Lucy show where Lucy
with the conveyor belt
is in the conveyor belt. So I actually got to but buy one of the conveyor belts and picking off some of the candy and put it in the boxes to see how it was done. So
classic.
To really get in and to be among those people who literally had those ideas and built those businesses, and for them to know that you share their passion because you've done it too was an unbelievable opportunity. And I think that's one of the reasons that being at AFPI now and working so closely with the Center for the American Worker, and knowing that I do have that understanding and that appreciation when I look at things that are happening to our American workers that When I look at some of the mandates that President Biden has put down, like I just did an op-ed about what electric vehicles will do, to our economy. You're mandating that these vehicles be in place, and yet what's that going to do to our electric grid? What's it going to do for our workers who are going to be put out of work because it takes fewer workers, to be an electric car manufacturer than it does in the kind of manufacturing we have today. So, when you're claiming to be the champion of the American worker and yet and of union workers, and you're literally putting in policies and mandates to put them out of work, that's really something we have to look at. We have to make sure we're taking care of our people, and you cannot do that unless you have been in among the people and the businesses, within our country. And that's what was so exciting, so thrilling to me, to be at SBA, but even before that, to have built a business from the groundwork. And WWE does go into communities all over the world, but in our country, to go in community after community and do things with local hospitals and local organizations, and they would come to your events, and you were able to put those smiles on people's faces and entertain them. It's just been incredibly wonderful for me.
It sounds like an amazing journey. Linda McMahon, I want to thank you for being with us tonight. Linda McMahon, chair of the America First Policy Institute, former president of WWE, and former U.S. Small Business Administrator. Linda McMahon, Godspeed to you and everything you're doing, to your family as well. I thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks so much. It was really a pleasure.
You Bye-bye. Bet. Bye-bye. More to come straight ahead. Your calls and more in a moment.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, America, welcome back. And to the phones we go, 833-4-VALDES. We're going to go straight to North Carolina right now, Morehead City, North Carolina, WTKF. Let's check in with Rose. Rose, you're on with Rich Valdes. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Miss McMahon was so impressive. She does more than that, what she mentioned, because we couldn't have rebuilt our home after Hurricane Florence in 2018 without the help of the SBA. Government agencies didn't work. They let everybody in that was contractors from out of state. They were stealing from people. There was no legitimate anything that was not, it was all not normal. President Trump declared it a disaster area, but it was like parasitic city. Everybody came in, everybody staked a place. They never helped. The state wouldn't help. They said, well, if you're out of state contractors, they couldn't help you because you'd have to sue in the state they came from.
Wow.
But they came in, and they were so organized and helpful, and 2% loans.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you were able to rebuild. And, yeah, I think that's just one more feather in the cap of the Trump administration. They did well on a number of things. And I think it underscores the importance of having somebody who was really on the front lines of building a business and helping people to rebuild, whether it's their business or whatnot, in a natural disaster like people are facing in Hawaii. Let's see if the Biden administration can step up to the plate and be a little more empathetic. Rose, thank you for your call. Folks, we're going to continue our discussion straight ahead. We're going to get into the shooting in Jacksonville, and there's apparently a bunch of other shootings that have occurred throughout the day and over the weekend. So don't go anywhere. Keep it locked right here. I am Rich Valdes. There is more to come straight ahead.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo, and I'm keeping you company straight till 1 a.m. Eastern Time. Of course, our phone number, if you want to join our late-night town hall conversation, feel free, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES. Now, there's been a number of shootings throughout the weekend up until today. The University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, had a shooting today. There was a faculty member that was killed in a shooting on campus, apparently by a disgruntled student. We'll get into that in a little bit. There was also the shooting in Jacksonville, Florida, which is really what I wanted to dig into because this has been an ongoing story, and it's really just a horrible, horrible story. I typically try to stay away from these horrible stories, but they need to be addressed. And lamentably, the folks that report the news, you know, I comment on them and on the news, but they're supposed to give you the facts. And while they give you some of the facts, they like to give you a ton of opinion. You would think they're the ones that are the talk show hosts. But, you know, it's always remarkable to me that no matter what atrocity occurs, they somehow figure out an angle to tie it into something that's political. You know, if it's a fire that some saying are arson or something else in Maui, that's because of the Trump administration's rollback on climate policies, and I mean, everything gets politicized. And Isaiah Rumlin, he is a I don't know what he is, but the president of the NAACP in Jacksonville. He was on CNN and saying that the shooting at the Dollar General was something that I guess they saw coming because they had seen Trump signs in the area. And I think this is just so vile, right? But this is what he had to say. Listen to Isaiah Rumlin, cut 15. Check this out.
Over the weekend, I spoke with my colleague, Juliette Kayyem. She used to be an official with the Department of Homeland Security. And she told me that Jacksonville specifically is a breeding ground of neo-Nazism, that they have been tracking this and seeing this. I mean, what can you tell me and tell us about the climate there in Jacksonville with these hate groups?
Well, I think the federal government and the Justice Department are going to have to do a better job and exercising exactly where these hate groups exist. I mean, we see these Confederate signs, we see the Trump signs constantly on our streets, and we know from that standpoint that there's hatred, and we're just going to have to deal with it some kind of way. And the Justice Department need to be right here today looking into it.
So there you go. They've already equated Trump signs to Confederate flags to hate, and that's why these things are happening, not because of irresponsible people doing irresponsible and reckless and evil things. So I want to get to the bottom of this. I want to bring in the national spokesperson and Florida State Director for Gun Owners of America. He's a former police officer and detective, Luis Valdes, with an S, no relation, but welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Rick, and thank you for the hard work that you do with your show on the air. And I just want to jump right in on this. It is sickening that you have Democrats trying to pin the blame for Democratic history on Republicans. Last I checked, it was Democrats who seceded from the Union and founded the Confederacy. It was Democrats who instituted Jim Crow bigotry. It was Democrats who passed Jim Crow laws that disarmed blacks and other minorities in the state of Florida. And it was Democrats who still to this day push gun control to disarm the law-abiding public. And sadly, those victims are part of the community. The fact that they were targeted based on the color of their skin is atrocious, and Gun Owners of America will not stand for that. Because last I checked, our Second Amendment rights is inalienable, and that belongs to every American, no matter their color, their creed, their ethnicity, their religion, their background, or their nationality. As a Cuban American, I find it insulting that you have politicians dancing and stepping over the bodies of these three people to push gun control to disarm the hundreds of thousands to millions of law-abiding Floridians in Florida that exercise their God-given rights to protect themselves from that nut job that went and targeted those three people.
Well, that was well said, and I got to agree with you. This is an absolute act of craziness. The gunman, they've identified him as 21-year-old Ryan Christopher Palmetto, and I think, rather than gunman, they should say the murderer. But left all sorts of racist writings, racial slurs, had a gun with a swastika on it, and they say that this guy was a Looney Tune already. And I just can't help but think, there are already laws in place, like background checks and whatnot, to get firearms. And the idea that they want to impose gun control that would limit every law-abiding American from being able to protect themselves from this kind of crazy, it's just beyond me, really. I think if anything, when things like this happen, there should be a call for more people to say, hey, you know what, maybe we should roll back some of this craziness. And the sheriff, Jacksonville County Sheriff, T.K. Waters, he made a statement today, and I want you to listen to this because I think it was appropriate and on point. Listen to this.
Well, we have to stop people that have bad intentions. The story is always about guns. People are bad. This guy's a bad guy. If I could take my gun off right now, and I put it on this counter, nothing will happen. It'll sit there. But as soon as a wicked person grabs a hold of that handgun and starts shooting people with it, there's the problem. The problem is the individual. Now, guns are a tool that people use to do horrible things. But it's the individuals that wield these things. So we are working hard to try to stop that. But in this situation, in this case, there was nothing illegal about him owning the firearm.
And I think that's really the point. It goes back to the old saying, it's not guns that kill people, it's people that kill people, Luis Valdes.
Very much so. Sheriff Waters was on point, and my 15 years as a law enforcement officer here in Florida backs that up. Bad people do bad things because they're criminals, and criminals break the law. Last I checked, murder has been illegal since the time of Hammurabi, and guess what? People still do it to this day because they are bad people. Florida already has background checks. Florida already has an under 21 purchase ban. Florida already has mandatory waiting periods. Did that stop any of this? No. The only thing that would have stopped this is the law-abiding people being armed and being able to shoot back. And sadly, you have politicians targeting minority communities and pushing and throwing and slandering them into thinking that if they own a firearm to defend themselves, they're bad. When in reality, and we know the honest truth, and sadly I know this as a police officer, when seconds count, I was minutes to an hour away, and we are reactionary. We show up after the fact to stop crime, to not stop crime, to catch the perpetrator. If you want to stop crime, you have to be your own first responder, and you have to defend yourself. And again, these three people that were gunned down by this racist nut job are victims here. And people using them to push political ideology is wrong. There is a mental health crisis in this country. It's not a gun violence problem, as some politicians put it. This kid, well, he's no longer a kid. He was 21. But when he was a kid, when he was a teenager, he was Baker Acted. And for folks that don't know, the Florida Baker Act law is very simple. If you have the means, the motive, and the opportunity to harm yourself or others, and you make statements to harm yourself or others, and you refuse voluntary treatment, you could be taken for up to 72 hours to the nearest mental health facility, and you could be examined. And he was examined, and they cut him loose. They didn't adjudicate him mentally defective. But it's already coming out that this guy was on a bunch of antipsychotic medications, and this is the same pattern that we're seeing with what we saw in
every
Parkland,
time.
What we saw in Buffalo, New York, what we saw all over. And worse, this guy is a copycat of the Buffalo and New Zealand shooters, the Buffalo, New York, and New Zealand shooters. Because what did both of them do? They decked out their firearms in written, hateful speech, hating people, targeting people of certain persuasions. And that's what this guy is. This guy copied that because the media gave them their 15 minutes of fame.
Luis Valdes, I want you to come back with us. I want to address this mental health stuff a little bit because it seems like there's a tie between preying on those that are mentally ill and the radicalization that all these instances that you mentioned shared. And it's bizarre, to say the least. Folks, our guest is Luis Valdes. He's the national spokesperson and Florida State Director for Gun Owners of America, former cop and detective, and we're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
My hands across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdes.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
We can't let hate prevail, and it's on the rise. It's not diminishing. Silence, I believe, as we've all said many times, silence is complicity. We're not going to remain silent. We have to speak out that there's a whole group of extreme people trying to erase history, trying to walk away from, the idea that we're sitting here, I never thought that I'd be president, let alone be president, and having a discussion on why books are being banned in American schools.
That's President Joe Biden, who I like to call Joe El Baboso Biden, saying that we can't stay quiet, we can't let hate prevail, and I agree with that part. But then he goes into talking about banning books. Again, yet another example of how the current administration is always trying to politicize absolutely everything that happens. And it's lamentable, to say the least. But I want to get into this topic of this radicalization of people. And I think that's always happening, right? We saw it in the early 2000s with a lot of like American Taliban, American ISIS, American Al-Qaeda. And that's a thing. People are always radicalizing people. But it seems to be a trend with young men that are somewhat mentally ill, taking antidepressants and whatnot. And all of a sudden they become Nazis and they want to kill people. And I find it crazy, but I don't know enough about it. So I'm going to learn from Luis Valdes. He's the national spokesperson of and Florida State Director, for Gun Owners of America. He's also a former cop and detective. Luis Valdes, tell us about your thoughts on radicalization. I know that the Democrats tend to say that this is the biggest problem facing America, and I think that's why they politicize it. I don't think it's the biggest problem we face, but it seems to be a problem where you've got young people that are out there shooting people in the name of racism.
Well, the problem that we have with it, it's not just radicalization. We have a mental health crisis in this country. Americans need to be serious with themselves, and they need to have a serious conversation. And that conversation is we need to have properly funded facilities. In my experience as a law enforcement officer here in Florida, most of these facilities are severely understaffed, they're underpaid, they're not maintained well, and you have a social stigma on mental health also. Individuals that should be seeking treatment, they don't because they're ostracized by society. So what do? They become recluse, and then they self-medicate with drugs and alcohol, and they further go down the rabbit hole of problems. And the biggest thing is mental health is not a permanent thing. You have a lot of individuals that have, they'll have a mental health crisis because of a traumatic event, a car accident, the passing of a loved one. You have our veterans who come home from serving our country. They have PTSD. But these are all individuals that want to live successful, productive lives. And to do that, it's no different than me right now. I have a chest cold. I go to my doctor. I say, hey, doc, I don't feel good. He prescribes me something. He looks over me. I get the treatment needed. But if an individual has a mental health issue, they're ostracized. They're shunned. They're ridiculed. And we need to put an end to that. We need to have proper funding. We need to have a proper conversation. And we also need to come to the understanding that, sadly, we do have some people in this country that are just mentally broken and they cannot function in society.
Right.
And the idea of where it's chronic, and the idea of something like a red flag law, oh, we're going to take the guns away from the crazy person. Well, guess what? As we saw in Wisconsin, crazy people don't need guns to commit violent acts. They could use an SUV and run over people at a Christmas Day parade.
Sadly. And that's a reality that we have to deal with. And it's what I've always said, that bad people are going to do bad things irrespective of whatever method they're going to use. People make the argument, of course, but guns are easier and they shoot bullets, so they don't have to actually do any of those crazy things. But it doesn't stop the crazy. And it is crazy, in my opinion, to take away a fundamental, inalienable right, the Second Amendment, from law-abiding citizens who would have otherwise a shot at defending themselves, and taking that right away from them or limiting it to the point where it's unattainable to actually exercise that right, which is unconstitutional and un-American in my opinion. I agree with you that we have this mental health crisis, and it seems to have been exacerbated by the pandemic. But there's a lot of things I think that society and culture have kind of lent themselves to with respect to these people. And by these people, I mean these shooters, these killers. I had a psychiatrist on our program not too long ago who was saying that so many of these shooters, they end up meeting a similar profile. And not only with the mental health stuff, but it goes beyond to what she called incel, or involuntarily celibate. And there's a profile that starts to emerge from so many of these shooters. And I can't help but think, is it the proliferation of the internet? Is it just the fact that when they were born, that now things are so digital? Like, I don't know. But it seems like there's just a lot of reasons for people to become isolated, like you said, to become a recluse. And when they do, this is the caveat. So I think part of it is the red flag should be, if you have a kid that's a recluse or your neighbor's kid is a recluse, maybe we should, pay a little bit more attention and see if we could get them the right help.
Well, it comes down to this. If an individual is a threat to society, letting them loose on the streets of said society doesn't stop the threat. If lawmakers want to be serious, then we need to get criminals off the streets, because we have a revolving door prison system. We've seen how that goes in a number of jurisdictions across our country. But the same thing goes with mental health. We need to destigmatize it so people that can function in society could get the treatment that they need. But at the same time, we need to properly fund it for, sadly, the few that cannot function in society. They also get the treatment that they need.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind the folks listening how they can get in touch with you and the work you're doing at GOA.
Real simple. Go to gunowners.org, folks.
Gunowners.org. Folks, that's Luis Valdes, national spokesperson for Gun Owners of America. Luis, thanks for your time, brother. I appreciate it. Godspeed to you. You are a patriot. Folks, there's more to come straight ahead. Your calls and more right now.
America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
All right, folks, I want to get to some of your calls because I know you guys are eager to weigh in on this issue, and there really is a lot to talk about, but I don't want to leave you hanging. Let's go to the phones. Let us go to Paul. He's calling from Reading, Pennsylvania, WEEU. Go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdes. Welcome.
Hi, Rich. So much to say. I feel like in my 77th year, I've entered bizarro land in a positive way. In other words, everything is backwards.
Yeah,
I'm liberal about wanting things to be liberated and going forward, but I'm disgusted about going way over the limit about letting prisoners go. However, we need to spend $1 trillion for infrastructure so that we have enough police, enough judges, enough jails, which I was against jails, but we need them. And so that we can process people and be fair. If they've committed a minor thing, maybe they're able to be let out on bail or on their promise. But there are bad people, as was just told to us, and they need to be confined until either mental health has changed them or they're dead. Because if they keep going back out again, chances are that they're going to kill again. Yesterday, I brought up the first thing. Don't bring me of a 10 point to get to reduce mass murders. And you're right, it is murders, which was to turn this publicity away from like the cameras and the sports arenas when they're doing things to not get the psychological. I want to be there. Secondarily to that, don't mention their name.
Right. Don't give them the accolades for being the so-and-so shooter, because they're looking for that type of infamy.
Correct. A male murderer, a male suspected murderer. We have to be fair. We do, and so forth. So that's the second point. Now, I used to think that the WWE, or however you say it, spelling's not my best point, was horrible. Oh, geez, that's all phony. It dawned on me in my 77th year that of course it's phony. And just like you mentioned, it's meant to be. They have phony arguments and plot twists, and my girl is looking at you, and all those things. It's entertainment, and people love it, or they wouldn't have filled the arenas with it. So, and I didn't know about the aluminum chair, but everything is done very, very carefully. They do have mistakes, like the fellow who fell down and hit his head on the end post and died.
Yeah.
But okay, now of that $1 trillion, build what we built for the Japanese in World War II. My goodness. Well, they got decent treatment, and had the Japanese army landed, we don't know which way these people would have gone, even for their own safety, we better say. And we didn't have a military institution to stop from the West Coast if they took San Diego and San Francisco until you get to the Great Lakes naval training place. Half of our country would have been invaded. So what do we build?
Paul, I want to ask you a question back on a comment you made earlier, because I agree with what you're saying. But if I were to play the devil's advocate, I would say, but if we build more jails and we have more cops, then we're in line with the colonists' plan for America, and we're going to continue to oppress people. And this is why they're dismantling it from within, right? So, yeah, we might be out of space right now because there's this major influx because they've opened up the floodgates at the border. But if you have, we've heard time and again, we've had the president of the Border Patrol Union on, Brandon Judd. We've had many others, former commissioners of Border Patrol and whatnot. And they've all said the same thing, that right now the Border Patrol agents have been turned into travel agents, and they're just corralling people and getting them onto a plane somewhere so that they can put them into New York City or put them somewhere else. And this is a coordinated thing that's happening by our government. So even if we got more judges, my thought would be, A, they would never let that happen, and B, they would just tell the judges, yeah, give everybody what they want, right? Kind of what they're doing in New York City with the no cash bail, with the rest of the crime that's going on. So I think we need a fundamental change of people, right? The people and the way that we're administering our system of justice, our system of laws when it comes to immigration. Because even if we had the infrastructure, I feel like they wouldn't do anything to make it work.
Well, we spent $1 trillion on true bridges and railways and roads, and that's going to save trillions of dollars from deaths, destruction of vehicles, loss of the person's ability to be productive. So we spend the $1 trillion, and we can do it to build comfortable, suitable housing right at the border for maybe 200,000. It seems incredible, and then finish the wall, even though we can't have a wall across the entire border, and put these places and the judges and these temporary residences at these border openings, because the law says if a person steps on U.S. soil and says, I want amnesty, refuge, we'll have a place for them.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think you're right. We have to do more to secure the border. And people say, oh, but what's the point of putting the wall? There's a plenty of point. If there's certain areas where you can't build a wall, guess what? That means it's mountainous or it's a tougher terrain. Fine. If that's the gap, then that's where you put the most amount of security, and you do what you got to do with drones and other types of sensors that they use, and you do it there. But everywhere else, you do it. But when we have an existing wall or a fencing, and then you've got our own people opening the fencing and saying, hey, come on through, that's when we've got a huge problem. And that's where we're at, Paul. Thanks for the call. Big shout out to you and everybody on WEEU. We're going to continue with your calls straight ahead. We've got more calls coming in now. Again, the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
We stated several months ago that we have reached full capacity. And that full capacity was verbalized, and now New York is just going to be visually actualized. We're going to see how much of our cup has basically runneth over. We have no more room in the city, and we need help.
They need help. He needs help. That's Mayor Eric Adams from the city of New York. I like to call him Elite Eric Adams because he's always really well dressed. And listen, I like to dress really nice too. But he's out and about on the town, right? Any club, nightclub scene that's really exciting and big party time, he's there. A lot of mayoring going on there, I would presume. And Eric Adams is saying, ya basta, no más, right? No more, because they can't have any more people. And again, that was a couple of weeks ago that he said that. Well, the Biden administration's written a letter, and they're saying that no, this isn't our fault here in the federal government. This is your fault for not managing things well. And it's a classic catch-22. Democrats blaming Democrats, and I just find it pretty funny. But I want to continue our discussion on the phones. Let's go to Atlanta, Georgia, WGKA, and check in with Al. Al, you're on with Rich Valdes. Welcome.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
Wonderful. Thank you, sir.
I believe America has been under secret attack for decades now, because all the problems we're having are not rational. They're coming up like it's 1, 2, 3, and like somebody's moving chess pieces on the board. I think we're in the grips of a secret war, and our enemies are winning. Number one, people who kill others, insane or not, I believe they should face the death penalty, because in the Old Testament, the scripture says, thine eye shall not pity, nor thy hand spare. The murderer shall be put to death, and so you will remove evil from among you. The purpose of the death penalty is not to punish, but to remove people who are no longer stable to stay in, or worthy to stay in a society that is run by law and not by other people's political opinions. If we don't recognize that we are in a state of attack and start punching back and defending ourselves accordingly, this fifth column that they've got corrupting us from within is going to succeed. We need to realize that all the plagues, all the economic downturns, all the conquering of the American oil companies by the Saudis, and all that is part of a plan that's been in effect for over 50, 60 years now. And we need to, it's past time for us to wake up and recognize that.
Listen, Al, I think you're spot on. And I don't think the war is so secret. I think there are plenty of people out there that have vocalized this, right? And I guess it comes down to word choice, where one person's fundamentally changing America is another man's war on America. And that's the reality, right? That's the reality that our body politic faces every time there's an election. We have to figure out, what do we stand for and what do we want out of our country? And lamentably, I think there's been a big movement, and maybe it's not a movement, maybe it's just happenstance. Really, the cause of it isn't really the issue. It's the fact that it's happening that's the issue. That Americans are not as inclined to understand civic engagement. They're not, and I don't mean Americans, all Americans, but I mean many of the new ones, right? It seems like the younger they are and the further they've gone through university education, the less they care about God, the less they care about the founding of our country, the history of our country, and the more willing they are to just kind of disregard that and just come up with what they think is sensical, as opposed to nonsensical. And I think that's the problem. There is a truth, right? There's a reality that this country was founded and how it was founded, right? There was many documents that informed the founding of our country, many of which were written by Sir Edmund Burke, others by others, and the Magna Carta, for example, is another one. And all of these things led to natural law, one's rights. Our Constitution has emblazoned upon the top, we the people. And it seems that has gone so far by the wayside to the point where it's like people, we the people, okay, that's fine sometimes. That was good when the old white men back 100 years ago, when they didn't have machine guns, they didn't have bazookas, they didn't have, and they tried to minimize the impact or the intent, really, the original intent of the Constitution. And I think that is the real problem that we have, where we arrive to where we are today, where people just want to make whatever they feel makes sense without really sticking to the plan, sticking to the rules, understanding the rules of the game, which I would say are outlined well in the Constitution, and knowledge of our founding. And when that is lost, people could tell you whatever they want. Because now it's like, well, we're not really playing by those rules anymore. We're playing by whatever rules we feel like playing by. And when we get into a situation where we play by our own rules and we do things as we feel like, that's where things go to hell in a handbasket, so to speak. And I think that's exactly where we are. So this attack on America, or this war against us, I think you're right. There clearly is an attack on the American family, right? And we've seen that since the days of FDR, when they redid welfare to make sure that you could only get welfare if you were if there was no father in the home. And that led to tons of fatherless homes. And so many other policies that little by little have built a track record for where we are today. And it's lamentable. It really is. But that's where we are. And now we have people that are extremely sympathetic to communism. They like to call it progressivism. They don't understand the roots of the climate movement and how that this was a huge thing in communist Russia and the USSR. And literally what Gorbachev got into as soon as Reagan told him to tear down that wall. There's so many linkages, and it just requires a little reading and understanding of what their goal is, their goal of global hegemony. And that, I think, is where we fall short in that civics education and historical analysis. So I agree with you 100%. I think you're spot on. If we stand for nothing, we'll fall for anything, and America needs us to stand up right now. Thank you, Al. I appreciate it. Big shout-out to everybody on WGKA, Atlanta, Georgia. Folks are coming back to your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. Of course, we're going to get to your calls momentarily. Open Phone America's moments away. If you want to join in the national conversation, the final hour of this program, hour number 3, is Open Phone America, where we the people, America, gets to call in and sound off on whatever we've talked about, whatever you want to talk about. If you disagree, we move you to the front of the line. I love those calls. So we're going to get to that. And, of course, the number 833-4-VALDES. Now, a couple of things I want to mention here. That I'll bring up again in the next hour, but just to put them out there. The state of California is now suing a local school district, which is requiring parents to be notified of students who change their gender. Now, you would think this should be the law everywhere, but it's not. And I don't know if you remember a couple of weeks ago, maybe about 4 or 5 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago. You know me and my time blindness. It could have been last year. Who knows? But it was recently, in my mind. And I am shocked that this is becoming a trend, but we always see it. New York, New Jersey, California, right? This is where they test all of the liberal crazy. In New Jersey, they did the same thing. The school district, I think it was in Manalapan, they decided to say, the school board got together, and they passed this regulation for their local school district saying, if a child is identifying as another gender, we have to notify the parents about this gender transition plan. This is what their kid has decided to do. And the state attorney general is now suing the school board in New Jersey, and now they're doing the same thing in California. So we'll get into the details of that straight ahead. I also want to throw this one at you. This is really an interesting one. I want to know where you land on this. So there's an airline that is now proposing an adults-only section on international flights. No. Now, this doesn't mean that you get to stream your favorite XXX website. This does mean that you will be free of children and children crying and children's noises and etc. on an airline flight. Now, I was thinking, rather than call it the adults-only section, why not call it the family-friendly, kid-friendly section? And then I started thinking, well, somebody's going to pay more for these tickets, I'm guessing, right? I don't think this is like back in the day where it's smoking versus non-smoking. Maybe it is. But I would imagine you pay for everything on a flight now. So if you want that flight where you're going to get that little peace of mind and maybe you get to sleep, well, then maybe, just maybe, you got to pay more. And they didn't want to pass that cost on to families. But I'm wondering if just charge them both. Just say if you want to sit in the kids-only section, it's an extra $20. If you want to sit in the adults-only section, it's an extra $20. And that actually sounds like a fair amenity to me. But I want to hear your thoughts on it. Don't go anywhere. It's Rich Valdes. Open Phone America starts right now.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you this Monday evening, hour number 3 of the program. If you're just joining us, welcome. Give us a call. It's Open Phone America. The third and final hour of the program is always dedicated to the tradition, a long-standing tradition of this program, started by Larry King back in 1978, which is the year I was born, by the way. and continued by the late, great Jim Bohannon for 3 decades. And we continue that tradition here today. So that's the number, 833-4-VALDES, if you want to give us a call, 833-482-5337. And a couple of things I want to throw out there before we get to your calls as they start rolling in. The few things, right? Something I mentioned earlier. It was a question posed to the audience, and I'd love for you to weigh in on it. And again, if you've never called the program, today's a great day to do that because these questions, they help me understand the national pulse a little bit better. But there's an airline, let me just give you which airline, hang on, that is now thinking of offering an adults-only section on their planes, being that some people don't like to hear little kids crying. So on international flights, Turkish Dutch airline is looking to remove the disruption of children's noises by offering an adult-only zone. And they're gonna start this with flights between Amsterdam and Curaçao. Now, Turkish Dutch Corendon Airlines said it's introducing the adult-only zone for flights between those cities on November 3rd. Quote, this zone on the plane is intended for travelers without children and for business travelers who want to work in a quiet environment, a translated version of their press release said. And this is in thehill.com. Now, the airline argued that these zones would also positively impact parents who can worry less about possible reactions from fellow passengers when their child is a bit busier or crying. The adult-only zones will be in the front section of the plane with 9 extra-large seats with additional legroom and 93 standard seats. Fancy. The zone will be physically separated from the rest of the plane using walls and curtains that create a shielded environment that contributes to a quieter and more relaxed flight. So it looks like they're going to be charging a little extra for this. For the one-way ticket in the adult-only zone, it's going to cost an additional 45 euros, which is just under $49. Now, I don't know. I was thinking $20. 20, 35, 50. 50 is what they're charging. It's not like you're getting business class here. It's, I guess, business class minus the kids. So they're segregating the place from children. And my thought on this was, is it better to sell it to the business or adult traveler, or to offer parents the amenity of saying, hey, look, would you like to go to our exclusive child-friendly area and charge them? And I think if it was my business, I would charge for both. And I'd say, whichever one you want to be in, it's a $49 upcharge or whatever they're charging. And I think that's it's interesting, and it probably makes a lot of sense. But anyway, I'd like your thoughts on that. And we're going to get to some other stories as well. There's another story I wanted to get to here that was interesting. Let me see. The DOD is, and that's not the one I want to do now. 800-pound alligator. Nope, not just yet. Another shooting in Louisville. 2 dead, 5 injured. Jeez. I've had enough shootings for today. Forgive me, folks. National Guard member shoots across the southern border, injuring a Mexican citizen on Mexican land. Nope, I'm going to pass on that one for now. DeSantis booed at a vigil for shooting victims. We'll get into that one in a little bit. And let me see. There was another big story I want. The people buying the land. Well, yeah, there was this story here. And I think I mentioned this the other day, and I just wanted to kind of circle back on it because there was all sorts of parcels and plots of land that were being bought up near a California military base. And people were wondering, is it the Chinese? Who's doing this? Well, the mystery buyers of nearly 1 billion undeveloped land. This is in the New York Post, by the way. Kind of adjacent to a military base, revealed to be Silicon Valley investors, not a network of Chinese spies. And again, I'm not sold that Silicon Valley investors are not Chinese spies. I mean, have you ever heard of TikTok? Anyway, the land grab near Travis Air Force Base by Flannery Associates, which has become the largest landowner in Solano County, which is about 60 miles north of San Francisco, has prompted concern that a foreign entity could be using the investment to harm U.S. national security. However, it turns out that Flannery's backers are a who's who list of big tech titans that include LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman and Emerson Collective philanthropist Lawrence Powell. That's according to the New York Times. So again, I don't know how much I believe of that. The deep-pocketed investors reportedly plan to turn the land into their vision for an ideal city featuring sustainable energy and a pedestrian-friendly layout. There's a lot of talk about this all over the place. They're also trying to build like these little communities around shopping malls to eliminate transportation so that you can live in what they call a 15-minute city. This is like ripped right from the pages of the World Economic Forum. You know, Klaus Schwab and his little Dr. Evil friend, Yuval Harari. And aside from the LinkedIn guy and Powell, the investors reportedly include Mark Andreessen of the private venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz, former Sequoia Capital partner Michael Moritz. I don't know any of these people. I guess I'm supposed to. If I was a big money guy, I'd probably know them, but I'm not a big money guy. I'm a radio guy. I know you, the callers. So we're going to get to your calls straight ahead. They're saying this is not Chinese. I say half of these guys probably shill for China on a regular basis because that's just how it is sometimes, especially in business today. Anyway, I want to get to your calls and your thoughts on this stuff. So let me give you the number. It's 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-482-5337. I'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
All right, familia, welcome back. It's open phones across America. And again, just a reminder that the Biden administration has the alcohol czar, Dr. Koob, and he says that they are strongly considering going to the Canadian model, which is a guideline of no more than 2 beers per week. 2 beers per week, according to Biden administration officials. So we'll see how that plays out. But I want to get to your calls. And, of course, there's some people on hold for a while, but I've got to get to Derek. He's in Jamestown, New York on WJTN because he usually disagrees with me. And if you disagree, you get straight to the front of the line. Derek, welcome. You're on with Rich Valdes. Go right ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, dear brother.
God bless you, sir. Welcome.
Yes, in the reply, because we have on this earth, in America is no exception, Muslims are all over the earth. There's 1 billion Muslims. They're doctors in America. They're lawyers. They do a lot. And they look at Americans as infidels because we got the Bible. They got the Holy Quran. Both books complement. The Holy Quran clears up all of the confusion that's in the Bible.
Oh,
and so once again,
the how-to manual.
Yes. Excuse me?
You said it clears up all of the confusion in the Bible, like a how-to manual.
How what?
I can't spend all day on this. Go right ahead.
The way you said that, you talk so fast, Rich. You said, it sounds like you said something about hot tomato. I don't know something about. But anyway.
No, I said a how-to manual.
Oh yeah, how-to manual. Yeah. And so that's the thing. The manual is in a code. You see, we looking at it in English, and the Holy Quran is in English, but none of them were in English. And when you have the Klan with hoods on,
the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK.
Oh yeah, and yeah, right. And
I'm just trying to follow the story here. We went from the Quran, and now we're talking about the KKK. What's the connection?
Yeah. And so the cross that the KKK uses, that's the symbol that Jesus in Christianity. So Christianity's been running rampant for hundreds of thousands of years now. But
thank God.
Have you got in touch with the Farrakhan's camp?
No, we haven't heard anything from them. I'll find out what the status is on that, and I'll let you know. But it would be a heck of an interview, and I hope he accepts the offer.
Yeah, he will. He's a wonderful. They told so much lies on that man. That man don't steal. He don't bribe. He don't take money from whites because he wants them to know your money is not going to have no strings attached to me. Okay, so
there's an issue with taking money based on people's race.
No, on his policy of what money does to people, because people give you money, they think you got to do something for them. So he don't play
like
that
politicians
game.
and whatnot.
That's
Sure.
politics, yeah, right, and he know that. So he don't take no money from them on the strength that he's not going to co-opt. They're not going to co-opt his message or nothing. So if you do get him on, have him for the full 2 hours, because it's going to be a blast. He's all the questions, he will answer all of them perfect and clear, and a lot of people consciousness will be raised.
Sure. Now let me ask you a question, because I know today we had some discussion on the shooting in Jacksonville, and this shooting of this crazy neo-Nazi person that went in and killed black people, I think is disgusting and atrocious and inhumane, and it's something that should never have happened and should never happen again. What's your thought?
My thought is he's been designated. He's one of them that they want to start a race war with the black man. The black man's nature is he's not a violent person. Our nature. If we were to come together, we could shut this whole America down. It'll be a terrible blood war, and nobody wants to see that.
Now, just to clarify, you're saying if black men came together as one, it would shut down America?
No, I'm saying if we took like a retaliation mentality, but our nature is not like that. We're not violent. We proved that with the Million Man March. 2 million black men, and no police had nothing to do. The police, they was just standing around being taught by that lecture. 2 million. No.
And that's a good thing, right? I think that's an excellent thing.
Yeah, and that was a classic for all races. But yeah, this violence is horrible. And that's the gun thing is out of control. Nobody talks about the gun thing and why this gun thing is going on.
Well, what are your thoughts on the gun thing?
Well, it's an agenda. It's an agenda. When they had the Israeli special police come over to America, they in America. They train all of these police departments how to do that chokehold and just kill black men. That chokehold.
Hold on a second. Hold on. So, Derek, you're saying that the Israeli police were sent to the United States and trained every police officer in America how to choke black men?
That's right. Every department. That's right.
Why is it not, if there was such a training, that it was done to show them a technique with any perpetrator? Why was it specifically black men? What proof do you have that this is only designed for a black man?
Yeah, this is shocking, and this is the agenda. But
where do you get this information from?
This is out. This is the thing. The media is not telling you nothing. Okay.
But who told you? I'm trying to figure out. Listen, let me share a story with you, right? So when my kids were little, my oldest daughter was in kindergarten, and that year there was somebody around the area that was trying to lure kids into their car, a 5-year-old, and my daughter was, I think, 5 at the time. So, and the other one was 1 or 1.5, whatever. Yeah, well, she was like 1. And they sent a letter home saying, parents be advised that somebody's trying to lure kids into a tinted vehicle. And then the next day they sent something saying, if you want to join the police department in that town as a volunteer, let us know. We'll send you to an abbreviated police academy, et cetera, et cetera. So I inquired about it, and it was something that would work for me. So the police reserve in that town, I signed up and became a reservist, part of their auxiliary. And it was cool. I went to the police academy for 3 months, got trained on use of force and how to arrest people and all the laws in New Jersey that would allow you to, use force and arrest people, and the use of the police car and all of that stuff. And I learned a lot, and we learned a lot of self-defense. We learned a lot of different techniques, and none of them were ever taught as this is specifically for people of any race. So when you tell me something like that, somebody who's been through a short version of a police academy, I can tell you I've never heard of anything like that.
Yeah, I know, because let's get it straight for the record. All policemen are not violent. All policemen are not bad. It's the bad ones that's making it bad for the good ones. That agenda that they did with you, that was a public thing and all of that. They got the other agenda and they of the squad, and they showing you every day. Just like that guy, what he did in Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown.
Well, Trayvon Martin was a Spanish guy who was getting robbed outside his house and shot the guy. And the guy happened to be Trayvon Martin, who said that he was just going to store for Skittles, but ended up going after this guy, Jorge Zimmerman.
Yeah, see, and that's on top of all of the historical lynchings and murders. They used to take the black woman's baby and feed
that's
them
a whole different story,
alligator.
Derek. I mean, hold on a second. If we're going to talk about, yes, there was racism and it was atrocious and it was horrible and lots of bad things happened, many, many years ago. But to say that Israeli police forces came to the United States to train our police just to be able to kill black men is just lies. Like there's no way you could support it. I've given you 3 or 4 different chances to try and say where you got this information from. And the reality is no police department in America could legally do that. And now I agree with you that most cops are good and there's a few bad apples. Sure. And if they decided to do that, that's a different thing. It's an isolated incident, but it's not like there's an overarching agenda to strangle black men by way of police.
Yes, it is. They're doing it. They're showing you. That's the proof right there.
There's no proof. I mean, listen, if we were to look at how many black men are killed by police, I would bet you anything, without even looking at the stats, that it's not by way of being choked. I think you're off base on this one. The music means I got to go, but I appreciate it, Derek. Thank you, sir. Derek in Jamestown, New York, WJTN. I always give him a lot of time to make his points. I don't always get them all, but I try my best with him. I really do. Folks, we're going to continue with the rest of your calls. We got Iowa, Minnesota, South Carolina, and more. You get to weigh in coming up next. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES.
No hair, no care, and live on the air. It's Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. And I want to go to the phones because some people want to weigh in on what we're talking about here. Let's go to Carter, Staples, Minnesota, KVBR. Carter, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdes.
Good afternoon. Good evening, Rich. First, I just want to say I came across your program, I don't know, a couple of months ago, but you are as graceful and patient with these people that call in as anyone I've ever heard. You don't ever resort to sarcasm. You are always just patient.
Just give me time.
In any event, the guy that just called in, the Quran was published in around 810 to 840 in there somewhere. Yeah, I think it's a pretty angry book. I mean, I think it's chapter 9, and I can double check this, but the infidels are just to be killed. That's all there is to it. It doesn't say anything about the Christian faith, like let's tell them why we think our idea is a better idea. Let's just kill them. And
yeah. Well, in fairness, I'm not an expert on the Quran, so I can't really weigh in one way or the other. I can say I know so many people that are Muslims that are incredibly peaceful, wonderful people that have never killed any infidels, that have never done anything like that. And then you have the more radical Islamists that kind of interprets the Quran a different way. The same way you have some radical Christians in truth be told, right? There's some verses in the Bible that quote, and the violent take it by force, and they mischaracterize these quotes, and they go and bomb abortion clinics. And I think radical crazies on any side are never good. It doesn't really help anybody or anything, at least from my perspective, Carter.
You're exactly right. None of them really take the text, except take a certain small passage and take that out of context. To further on this welfare issue, I'm an old Democrat from the 70s. I belong to the Union. I was voting Democrat for that purpose. But the Democrat Party of the 70s is nowhere close to the Democratic Party of the 2020s here.
Now, I know that to be true, but what are the main changes you've seen, Carter?
Well, they've gone so far to the left. The idea that the left and the right can sit down and come up with a compromise has become more and more difficult over the last decade. When I was a child, I had a mom who worked. She got, I think it was referred to as AFDC in those days. She could only earn X amount. But she was expected to go to work. And then the government made up the difference. If in those days you had to earn $4 an hour and she was earning $2.25, the government made up the difference between the $4 and the $2.25. She wasn't allowed to just sit at home. The government still expected mom to go out and work for 40 hours, and then the government would just make up the difference. And I think that's a system we should think about going back to.
That's a great plan. Let me tell you, one time, I share this story, and I will share it a lot because not too many people have this privilege. But I had a phone conversation while he was waiting on hold to talk to the great one, Mark Levin, with Dr. Thomas Sowell, the world-renowned economist. And we had a lot of discussion about a lot of things, mainly about my involvement in charter schools and his, because he had just written a book on that. But he went on to, in the interview and later to explain about his story where he'd grown up, I think it was in Alabama or Georgia, somewhere in the South, and made his way to New York so that he could have more opportunities. And he was living with a family member that was receiving public assistance. And he described it the same way that you did, that you had to go and work, you had to do whatever, and eventually she was able to come off of it. And, living in a housing project wasn't something that was done in perpetuity either, because he said they lived in public housing, and that it was a very respectable process that really helped people to move forward and not stay on any type of public assistance. However, today, we've created a system that's not a safety net, but really an ecosystem for poverty, where people can now become a permanent member of the poverty class. And I think that is crazy. And the common sense ideas like you're talking about and like Dr. Sowell has mentioned, that's exactly what we need in America to allow people to participate and join in on the American dream. At least that's my 2 cents.
No, and I think you're exactly right. We have forgotten the general sense of the idea that we feel better when we're out for 40 hours. We get food for our kids, we get clothes for our kids, but we don't sit on the couch all day, send the kids off to school, and wait for that check to come in.
Yeah, you're right. And it ultimately creates a situation where we have people that are becoming not only just dependent on the system, but then figure out how to work around that system. And instead of helping people, we're kind of hurting them permanently. And I think that's a terrible place for us to be. Carter in Staples, Minnesota, thank you for your call, sir. I appreciate it. Godspeed to you, KVBR. Folks, we're getting to the rest of your calls right now. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
Congratulations on just an amazing show. I know you've worked so hard in the industry, and nobody deserves it more than you do. So I'm happy to see you really succeeding here. It's awesome.
America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
The president said in Tahoe that he had tentatively decided to recommend everyone get the new vaccine. When is he going to decide finally?
So I think you've heard from the FDA and CDC. They've made an announcement on the new vaccine. So certainly they said that there'll be an updated vaccine mid-September, I believe. So we know that, as you all know, vaccinations against COVID-19 remains the safest protection for avoiding hospitalization, long-term health outcomes, and death, which is why we are going to be encouraging Americans to stay up to date on their vaccines.
House Press Secretary, KJP, she's, of course, responding to that clip of audio. It's a little hard to hear, but Biden basically says, yeah, we got a new vaccine, and everybody should take it. Everybody should take it, new vaccine. And I say, move over, Dr. Fauci. We have America's new health expert, Joe El Baboso Biden. He's the one now recommending vaccines as if this was the middle of the pandemic. We have a new vaccine. You got to wait, but wait, there's more. You're going to love this one. I got to tell you. This is just so funny. And there's some other Biden news out there. I don't want to throw too much at you, but the National Archives has now admitted it has 5,400 Biden pseudonym emails. You know, him saying that he's Robert Peters or Robert Ware or J.R.B. Ware. I mean, all of his fake names. More than 5,000 emails that potentially show President Biden using a pseudonym. So we'll get into that in a moment. But I want to get to your calls. I know a lot of people have been patiently waiting. Let us go to Ann in Ames, Iowa, listening on KASI. Welcome, Ann.
Well, thank you very much. I don't have much controversial to say tonight. I was just calling to tell you that I really enjoyed your interview of Bill Cunningham.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was a great interview. He's an amazing broadcaster and literally, quote, trademark, a great American.
Yeah, right. And I just stumbled on him a couple of years ago, and so I make it a point to sit up late every Sunday night and hear what he has to say, but I really didn't know much about his background, so I just found it very interesting. It sort of made him more of a real person than what I call him, my ranting and raving Sunday night talk show host. So I'm a real fan of his and a fan of yours, too.
Oh, thank you, Ann. I appreciate that. And I'm a fan of his as well. I actually worked with him several times in years past, and he was always a pleasure. He's a really excellent broadcaster, really bright guy, and I was happy that he was able to join us because it's not always easy, depending on what shift people work. I'm live at night, so not everybody is live at night or able to be live at night, but I was grateful that he came on, and I'm grateful for your call as well, Ann.
Well, thank you very much, and I think you guys that are willing to have a late night show are pretty brave.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's not always easy, but it's always fun. Now, Ann, let me ask you before you go. What are your thoughts about this new vaccine? It's not an old vaccine or a booster. It's a new vaccine for COVID-19 that the president wants everybody to take.
Take it. I wouldn't take any vaccine right now. I just think there's been too many complications, and it frightens me.
Yeah, I hear you. I think a lot of Americans feel the same way. Thank you, Ann in Ames, Iowa, KASI. Big shout out to everybody listening over there in Iowa. Let us continue our little journey across America, and let's check in with, let's see here, who's it? Robert in Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdes.
Hi, Rich. I just wanted to let you know that you spoke about Mikhail Gorbachev not too long ago, and I just wanted you to know that, he said, point blank, he said the reason why the Soviet Union fell is because the people of the Soviet Union didn't want it anymore. And all the other people who helped, like Ronald Reagan has helped significantly, great job. The Pope, great job. All the people of Western Europe and the whole rest of the world who helped, great job. But the thing is, what they did is they basically prevented a catastrophe from happening because, there were a couple of people who weren't so crazy about the Soviet Union falling, like, for example, Erich Mielke, for example. And he may have had a greater leg to stand on. And remember, Mikhail Gorbachev also was there was a coup at the end and he was in jail for a while. And as a matter of fact, I even wrote him a letter, and I put return receipt requested. And in the meantime, by the time the letter got there, he got out of jail, and I got the return receipt requested with a big red star that was stamped on there. So he was an amazing guy.
Gorbachev?
He remember from Gorbachev. That's right. Yes. And the other thing was, remember the parade he had downtown Washington D.C. with Ronald Reagan. They did a tour of downtown Washington by car, the two of them. Okay, well that was also a great idea because it showed everybody, here, attention, this is what's going to happen. Now get ready for this. So that was a good thing too, because that put people in the former Soviet Union and the whole rest of the world on notice that it's going to happen now. So you don't do anything rash. Do everything reasonable because the end is coming. Well, everybody knew the end was. I sensed it was near myself. I mean, I had no doubts about it. I just was hoping that it wasn't going to be like, you see, when a society like that falls apart, it cracks a lot of times. It doesn't fall apart easy but they did a good job in making it fall easy. And Gorbachev was a very honorable guy, and Ronald Reagan was very lucky when he said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall." Well, he was lucky he was saying it to the right guy. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know that it was luck. I think Reagan knew exactly what he was doing, and I think he knew that the timing was right to go for this move, and it was both diplomatic and political. I believe that Gorbachev was the right guy in so much as he was willing to play ball with Reagan because he knew they really couldn't mess around much more, right? It was either this or that, and they chose this, and that made the most sense. But I will tell you, I've spoken with several communist scholars, anti-communist scholars, and researchers, and they've shared with me that many in the anti-communist movement and in that world, in that field of study, they believe that this wasn't really a collapse of communism in the USSR as we saw it, but more so a ceremonial collapse or reversal of some of their policies. So to say, and this is my opinion, that somehow Russia today and what it's become after it was divested the way it was is different from China in many ways. But I think in many ways it's the same, right? Nobody's going to argue that China is not still communist in many ways, right? They're run by the Chinese Communist Party. That's their only political party. That's what they are. But yet they use many elements of capitalism to continue to build their economy while still doing what they do, like imprisoning Muslims and making the women and grow their hair so they could sell human hair, and then harvesting organs and all the other stuff that they do that are human rights abuses, and they seem to never get in trouble for. But ultimately, I tend to believe that the fall of communism as we knew it didn't really occur. It happened, but it didn't change things. And all we have to do, I think, is look at the way things work in Russia today, where you had prime minister, then president, then prime minister, and whatever other positions he had. It's been the same guy, Vladimir Putin, forever and a day. And it's not because of his overwhelming popularity or because he's the nicest guy in town, but it's because he's still like a despot-style dictator. And I think this is what really this is what really drives a thriving communist movement, where the government is ultimately in charge, where if you're Yevgeny Prigozhin and you decide to stage a coup or a march against Putin, you end up dead. And I didn't think that would happen, at least not that quickly, but it did. So that's my personal thought on that. And I appreciate your story. I don't know that I would call Gorbachev a great guy, but I do know that he was probably the best guy to cut the deal with. We're definitely not going to cut a deal like that with Putin if, the roles were changed and we were to do that today. Robert, thank you for your call. Folks, there's more to come straight ahead. Your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, folks, as we wrap up the program tonight, we're going to go to La Crosse, Wisconsin, WIZM. Check in with our buddy Brent. Brent, welcome. You're on with Rich Valdes.
Thank you very much. I consider myself a Christian. I learned about Christianity the hard way through jail and prison. Unfortunately, I got jumped years ago when I worked for Canadian Pacific Railroad. I was 24, and so anyway, I learned the hard way, and I realized I run this one book when I was a friend in the library. It talks about Christianity. I think the problem we have in our country is they're leading a lie that this was a Christian country, and they're trying to say it wasn't, but it was founded upon Christianity when the Pilgrims landed. And the book of Zephaniah talks about the story the gentleman was talking about. Zephaniah talks about how the immoral and deceitful leaders created a society where only the evil and wicked were allowed to prosper and the righteous suffered, and society started deteriorating. Isaiah chapter 1 is a good chapter to read about the Bible too, and so is Haggai and Habakkuk. But my ancestors go back. My earliest ancestor born in America was born in a place called Easthurst, Massachusetts in 1640, and I wasn't really expecting to get into tonight, but I think a lot of the problems is we're being led astray from God, and we need to be led back to the Lord.
I think you're 100% right, Brent. And not because I think we should be a theocracy, and not because I think that Christianity should be the lay of the land. I think that I hope everybody would consider it and make it their faith. But ultimately because there's nothing in Christianity that makes America a worse place, in my opinion. And that's just the bottom line. I don't see anybody being hurt by it, and by people turning away from any faith, honestly, makes us a more secular nation, which opens up the doors for lots of other things that are maybe not consistent with where we need to be. And I wish I had more time to expound upon that, but that's all I got. Hasta la próxima.